Blog Talk Radio.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. We've got a great show for you tonight. As always, we're going to be starting off with the Coach's Corner panel here in just a moment or two. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be joined by tonight's special guest, International PGA Tour golf professional Horace Brown is going to be joining me here on the second half. We got lots to talk about tonight, so I hope you stick around for the second half of the show as well. As always, we're live every Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Central, unless otherwise stated, here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And the best way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live, or just simply type Golf Talk Live up in the search key, and that will take you, of course, to the main page. And you can listen, as I said, live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central. For some reason, if you can't join us live, just scroll down that page to the on-demand section. And, of course, as I've mentioned so many times, all of the shows are auto-recorded, so you can listen when it's convenient for you. You can also jump in on any of the other great social media platforms like iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, and, of course, TuneIn.com. And, again, just type in Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to those respective social media platforms. Always update the shows every week on Facebook at Golf Talk Live blog, and also on my personal page. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. You can always get updates there as well every week about who's going to be on the panel and who my special guest is going to be. And also under my personal page or my personal profile on LinkedIn.com as well. So you can just type in Ted Odorico, and it's Odorico. As I mentioned, I got a great panel tonight. These guys have been on so many times. It's just like having family on here. So always excited to have these two gentlemen on. Let me just tell a little bit about each of them, just to remind for those maybe joining us for the first time, and then we'll get into tonight's discussion. First up, of course, is John Hughes, PGA Master Professional and the president of the North Florida PGA section. He was also the recipient of the 2013 PGA of America Horton Smith Award, and he's also a top 30 instructor with Golf Tips magazine. Also joining the panel, and again, a very frequent guest on the Coach's Corner panel, and I'd like to hope I can call him a friend as well, and that's Peter Egazarian. He's both a PGA and TPI teaching professional at the Traconic Golf Club. He's also the head men's golf coach with the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts, as well as the founder of the Northeast Golf Performance and a member of the Proponent Group. Gentlemen, as always, welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight on Coach's Corner panel.
Thanks, Ted.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for jumping in. And as I've said so many times, I know it's not always easy when we're out working during the day and trying to help all of you out there improve on your game to then jump on for an hour doing the Coach's Corner panel. So very much appreciative of all of the great guests that I have on the Coach's Corner panel. Guys, we're going to talk about, we're sort of midstream, if you will, for some, especially up in the Northeast. We're well into the summer season. People have had many rounds under their belt, so to speak, and we're going to talk about a couple of things. Obviously, there's really sort of two, I like to categorize two camps, if you will. There's those that are maybe having a pretty good golf season, doing fairly well, and then there's those that have sort of hit a wall. They're just struggling and so forth. So, Peter, I'm going to start with you. And what I'd like for you guys to do is, and again, you don't certainly have to give out names or anything like that, but certainly use and draw from your own students and those that, some of the groups that you're working with as part of your answers. But when you come across students who maybe have hit some roadblocks through the season, they're just really struggling with their game, what is the number one thing that you like to do with them to sort of get them on back on track? Peter, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I like to go on the golf course with them and have just a really open conversation. You know, the more I can listen and understand and, you know, take in their thought process, their, you know, any kind of, maybe if it's, you know, just any kind of technical stuff they might be thinking about, and understand their mindset, you know, where they are in life, what's going on, you know, just, I spend a lot of time listening. And then, you know, I offer,
Right.
you know, some solutions as to, you know, potentially what can help, you know, save the rest of the season, something they can do, or just, you know, help them discover what they're already doing well and focusing on that instead of all the negatives, and just try to, you know, reset their mindset, you know, for the rest of the, you know, 3.5 months we have left in the Northeast here, and help them enjoy it. That's the whole thing. I mean, I think everybody's in golf has a different idea of what fun means to them, but it is all geared towards having fun, and you know, that's really the need, is for me to be more of a listener, and then to really base the solution around what their mindset is, and offering a solution for them that can really help them enjoy it more.
Yeah, and let me just follow up, John, before I get to you with Peter, just on that. I mean, essentially what I'm hearing you say, and I think this is something that a lot of teacher professionals and coaches out there in the golf industry are starting to understand, that it's not so much what's going on with the golf swing necessarily, that a lot of times it's what's going in between the years. And correct me if I'm wrong, Peter, but essentially what I'm hearing you say is really a lot of times, especially in today's economy and with so much going on coming at us from all different directions, a lot of people carry a lot of anxiety and pressures from work and home life, and that can creep into the golf game. So that's really what you're trying to do, is find out what some of the outside elements that may be affecting before you actually get into making repairs with their actual golf swing, correct?
Yeah, I'll give you an example, you know, because it just happened an hour ago, you know, because, you know, one of the junior golfers that I teach and coach, and it's on an ongoing basis, is doing extremely well. But this is, and I talked about this before, this is new attention. And we're getting, you know, him, you know, the student and I, or player and I, get together on, you know, a bi-weekly, monthly basis, and we check in with each other during the season. During the off season, we spend more time together. But we had 0% of our 2 hours today was talked about technique. And it was all talked about how he was feeling about all of this new attention that he's getting, how he's dealing with it, how he feels about it. You know, how do you think how does he feel like it's affecting his game? How does the player feel like they can move forward and deal with it in a different way so it's not affecting them? And how they can, you know, deal with this moving forward. So it's great. It's all positive things. There's all, you know, just people wishing him well on social, all of these really positive things, but it's all very new. So, and then, you know, he's feeling the conversation, feeling better about it, because we talked about the things that were most important to him. And I think that can hold true for everyone. You know, there's something that's going to be the most important conversation that they need to have. And it's, you know, like you said, it's just going to be different for everybody. And it's tough to really give a more prime example than maybe something like that, where their mindset's affecting their performance. You know, that's just one example, I guess.
Right. Well said. John, let me go to you now. You know, Peter raises a very interesting point. You know, a lot of times I think sort of the golf profession of the old, if you will, you know, sort of ran out, and we talked about, you know, when we either were dealing with a new student or we were dealing with a student that was running into some issues right away, it was, well, let's get back to the basics, the grip, the stance, the posture, and those are certainly all important. But as Peter suggested, you know, we have to look at the whole picture. We have to look not just at the physical part of the game, but what's going on upstairs with the player as well, because a lot of those things can affect even the best players. But what about yourself? What obviously, I'm sure you would agree with a lot of that. what do you do, John? You've got a player that's come to you or a student that's come to you. They've been playing now for a few months, and all of a sudden it's like the wheels have fallen off the bus. Where do you start with them, and what's your recommendation for students like that?
Thanks, Peter, and thanks, Ted, for having me on again. Just want to say that first right off the bat. And I'm very similar to Peter in that. I'm going to sit and listen. I'm going to listen to a lot of things that they may not recognize they're saying. Because a lot of times as we're identifying these strengths and trying to eliminate variables, trying to eliminate some things that aren't necessarily consistent, when you're listening, you're on the course watching, evaluating, a lot of times what's standing in someone's way is the most obvious and they just can't see it. And Peter's example as far as, hey, I'm doing so well, I'm getting this new kind of attention. It's outside this person's comfort zone. And you're not going to find that out unless you're listening and eliminating some things that just aren't common, just aren't consistent. From a physical standpoint of view, a lot of times, even with the better player, you're going back to some maybe there's a fundamental off. And a great example of that is Jordan Spieth's putting over the past year. It just basically boiled down to a fundamental that he never knew he fell into. He was in it for a while, it worked, and then it didn't work, and all of a sudden the world blows up. So it just doesn't happen overnight, and he's a great example of that. Contrary to Jordan Spieth, you've got the average amateur, the weekend person. They're not spending as much time. So when I'm looking at the common denominators of strengths and having them focus on that, I'm not necessarily wanting to point out the weaknesses. I may point out you're off with your fundamental basics, and those are always baselined, whether it's a collection of data, video, or numbers, or it's just a collection of preferences that we've spoken about over the years that maybe one of those preferences are out. Another great example of that, and I'm going to date myself, is the, I want to say it was the 1986 New York Mets and Keith Hernandez, who goes into a batting slump middle of the season, and he starts looking at video at the beginning of the season when he was on a tear, and it turns out he kept his front shoulder into the swing a little bit longer when he was on a tear, and his front shoulder was opening up. That was one of the first examples I can remember, and that's a great example of, hey, what were you doing when you were doing it well? And let's go back to that. Sometimes it's fundamental, sometimes it's a position. A lot of times, as Peter said, it's a mindset. Your expectations get the better of you. So it's a listening game on my behalf. It's different for every person, but there's always a commonality as you collect the strengths that identifies the most obvious, and it's your choice to either work on it or forget about it. And sometimes forgetting about it is the best choice you can make.
Well said as well, John. You're exactly right, and you're both correct. I think that, one of the biggest mistakes, and it's not certainly limited to just the golf industry. It's really any area of our lives. I think that a lot of times we need to be, as coaches and teaching professionals, we need to be good listeners first and foremost, because a lot of times there's things that the students will say, and if we're not really coherent and not really picking up those things, a lot of times we're just going to sort of run over them and start doing things that may not benefit them in the long run, and ultimately they're going to get frustrated. And I think this has happened, and certainly to no fault, let me just clarify that, to no fault of any specific method or coach or teaching professional out there. I think it's just, sometimes we get caught up in our own excitement. We enjoy doing what we do, and we want to do the best that we can to help the students. But I think in this day and age, with so much information, and we've talked about this before, guys, on the show, there is so much outside information on the internet and out sources, with even in the golf industry, videos that that are being put out that are not necessarily by qualified individuals, that give a lot of misinformation. So on that note, and I know we've talked about this before, but I want to touch on this again because, Peter, you mentioned something there about this particular individual that you were helping out today or here recently, that they've sort of had this newfound attention. So working with, and Peter, I'm coming back to you, obviously, working with some of these younger players that are, going through collegiate golf and getting ready to, launch a career, whether to play professional golf or in some other area perhaps. There's obviously a lot of outside influence and through social media and other applications. How do you, as a coach and also as a teacher professional, how do you help them sift through and navigate through that in order to be able to help them get the best out of their abilities?
Yeah, we really talk about it right up front. With the competitive junior golfers I work with, well, we talk about it almost every session for a period of time. We just kind of
right.
I'm always checking in with them personally. I'm like, what's going on? What's up? You playing too much Fortnite? What's going on? That's a real thing, by the way. They play Fortnite until all hours of the night, and it's a real thing for junior and college golfers. That it's something that's very real, and you have to talk about it. But and it's an ongoing conversation about just helping them, like you said, navigate the social, and I'm just encouraging them to express gratitude and be thankful and be, as gracious as they possibly can be. And, whenever people want to give them, praise, always deflect it to your parents and always deflect it to your teammates or whatever you want to do to really give, to show gratitude, to give credit where credit's due to people who are supporting you, because it's always, you're never doing this alone. And I encourage them not to bring me up at all, because I don't, I'm not part of their family as much as I do see them. But that's what I always recommend, and if there's people that are giving them noise on social as a collegiate Division III golfer or as a junior golfer in Western Massachusetts or New Hampshire, in New England, then you just don't need to be associated with them. You understand that there's a certain, they might have a certain something going on in their life that they're dealing with, and we really have these conversations because it's sometimes, and then sometimes this is a conversation that I urge a parent to have with the child, but a lot of times they're going to have a conversation with me that maybe they feel maybe funny, that maybe they feel as though the parent doesn't understand. They are teenagers. That's kind of a natural thing that they're feeling. Sure. But, I'm just talking in how they can perform the best as a junior golfer, a student athlete, and then, helping them understand that, the effort and the attitude they're bringing to their golf game can really translate to their professional life eventually, and the golfing ability that they can have at a minimum after they graduate high school or college is going to serve them very well for the rest of their life. It's not like every other collegiate or high school sport. This is something you never stop playing if you choose to. Mm-hmm. So it's not like baseball or football or soccer or whatever, that you reach a certain point where your physical capabilities aren't there. It's, they do have this, they're carrying this ability for the rest of their lives. So that's just an example of a bunch of the conversations we have, and it's just generally dictated by whatever they want to bring up and talk about. So that's the gist of it.
Yeah. And that's good to have that dialogue. And I think, again, all industries, and again, not just the golf industry, but, there has been a lot of changes. We've seen this in all major sports. It's a different breed of athlete out there, and we've noticed it, of course, on the major tours, whether it be the PGA or the LPGA Tour and some of the other step-ups like the Symetra and Web.com. We see a whole new breed of golfer, John, and there is a lot of outside influence in their life, not just through social media, but just other things as well. And I know you've also worked with collegiate players and at that level that have a goal and a drive and a desire to be, the best and compete with their peers. What do you do to keep them focused on that task and remind them that it's not always going to be an easy journey? It's not always going to be fun, and certainly we try to make it fun. but sometimes, it's time to buckle down and let's get down to business. What do you do to sort of help them navigate that and help them, keep some of the outside influences from distracting the task at hand?
So I would say it doesn't necessarily apply to juniors so much as I think it's part of the maturation of skill levels that you go through, no matter what your age, no matter what your gender, that you have to, for lack of a better way of saying it, gatekeep what you're keeping close to you and let go of those things that are not productive in reaching the goals or the challenges you've set for yourself. So at a junior level, it's a lot of social media, just social in general. A lot of the innuendo and just gossipy rumors that happen at your school or at your club or whatever the case may be. It's understanding one thing and one thing only. Does this contribute to me and my success or not? And that's sort of the rule of thumb that I use with most everything in my life, and that's what I try to pass on to my clients is, did it affect you? If it doesn't affect you, there's no need to spend any time on it. If it affects you, then let's look at how it affects you. And if it affects you in a positive way, then that's something we need to look at as maybe adding to the routine. If it's affecting you in neutral, we have to reassess whether it's necessary or not. And if it's affecting you in a negative way, but yet it's a long-standing tradition or routine or whatever, we have to look at it as, have we outgrown that? Have we aged out of that? Or is that something that's just point-blank a distraction? And that's really the first thing you have to learn to do is eliminate the distractions. What's funny about this, I was at the PGA Championship Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, supporting a North Florida PGA member who qualified, Matt Borchert. And he was commenting about all the distractions that are being placed on the 20 PGA professionals that qualified. And it was really interesting to hear how he was eliminating his distractions. Here's a gentleman that's playing in a major championship. It's his third major that he's played in. But he said that being the first time at the PGA, being a PGA member, the distractions were much, much different, and the responsibilities and demands placed upon him were much, much different. And that at dinner Tuesday, he basically talked about having to relearn to use the word no. Every golfer, as they go along, wants to be able to give back and recognize and for lack of a better way of saying it, do a favor for people who have gotten them there. And that's all fine and dandy. But to reach your goals, you've got to be able to judiciously use the word no, whether it's a distraction, a person, an event, a cause, and really focus inwardly on what you're passionate about and be able to fit that into your time puzzle. The best players in the world struggle with this all the time. Jordan Spieth after his breakout year, Woods after his breakout year. I can name them. I can keep naming them. That sophomore year, they have to learn to eliminate the distractions judiciously, learn to use the word no differently. That goes for a lot of different things, not just on the course. It goes for off the course as well. This is the difference between those who are truly committed and those that are half-heartedly committed. And I don't mean half-heartedly in a negative way. It's all based on what I've always talked about on this program, life priorities. And that's okay. If your life priorities say that you're making a half a commitment, then let's eliminate those distractions. Let's learn to use the word no so that half commitment is a full half commitment, not just a quarter of a half of a commitment. When you're doing that, you're bound to be better. You're bound to maintain and sustain your level. Reaching your potential and maintaining it is that much easier.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and thanks guys for giving some examples as well. This is important to really not just sort of talk about possible scenarios, but actually getting into real life experiences that we can share here on the panel discussions not only for our fellow professionals, but also for the general public out there that can hear and say, you know what, because I think, Peter, you would probably agree, and John, that, sometimes as human beings, when we hear somebody else struggling or having difficulties in a similar fashion to what we are, certainly anybody that has good morals, there's a certain sense of, okay, hey, John over here or Peter over here or Ted over here kind of knows how I feel, and there's sort of a relatability and sort of a mutual understanding, if you will, and it kind of helps to make you feel better that you're not the only one going through that. And the reason why I wanted to kind of tackle this discussion a little bit tonight, and we'll drift into a different area here in just a second, but Peter, I think that one of the things too that is attitude. We can talk about how the importance of understanding and making things relatable in our everyday lives. But also too, we hear a lot of people blaming, say, well, I've taken some lessons and I'm just not getting any better in that. But a lot of times when you really listen to their discussion, there's a very negative attitude already sort of preconceived in the initial discussion. So they've already come in with a negative attitude. So this is something too that I'm sure you've had to deal with some of the junior golfers that you're working with as the head coach. How do you tackle that area and getting them to be more positive even in difficult times?
No, I think it's something you deal with every age group. They're going to bring a certain mindset that, they're going to have preconceived notions about what their experience is going to be with someone like myself or someone like, John, that maybe they took a lesson, 10 years ago, and they think it's going to be the same exact thing where we're just going to tell them, you have to do this and you have to do that, you have to do that. That's enough of an attitude or a mindset, as I call it, that's going to take a little bit of time in the initial part of our session just to kind of dispel and help them relax and get over some of that anxiety of that what their experience might be moving forward, because it's, at least that's what I find with all age groups. When you're talking about at the collegiate level, I have an ability to choose who is part of my program and who I can invite in and to play there. And attitude is my biggest thing. I will take it. I mean, it's Division III golf. There's no scholarships. I will happily take a student athlete that has a 77 average or an 80 average, that has an amazing attitude, that wants to come and work. I mean, those are the student athletes I'm looking for, because I know, from what I can bring to the table and what they're going to bring to the table in attitude, we can help them shoot par or 75 or maybe even better than that, depending on how hard they're really willing to work. But like you said, if they're bringing attitude of, say you have an adult that you've been coaching for, a month or so, and they have an expectation that they're going to get better immediately, they're going to be where they want to be immediately, then you need to have a different conversation and, just help them understand exactly maybe how far they've already come. Maybe you're not exactly where you want to be yet, but, and that's where I leverage TrackMan and some of the things we've done. And, we have that record, and, we look back and we say, okay, maybe, this is what your shot dispersion looked like, when we started, and now this is what it is. Or, if you took a skills test and this was your score at this point, and now we took this exact same skills test last week or whatever, and this is what you had, you could see how much more you improved, how much closer to the target you are. There's things you can do and just help them understand that, wow, you are getting better. It just, you're not there where you want to be yet, but you're on your way. Or there's all of these things that just, you need to have whatever conversation needs to happen to help the player understand that, you need to come with a positive attitude. I mean, as far as the collegiate players, it's something that I asked of them for every practice. All I ask for when they're coming into the program or coming into the season or coming into practice or coming into an event is effort and attitude. That's all I care about. And I tell them flat out, if you can give me a positive version of both, I'm going to take you where you want to go. The score is going to happen. Everything else can take care of itself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. You know, it's obviously that positive attitude, and it's the way that they apply themselves, I think, that is going to dictate how the lessons or how the coaching experience is going to be. And John, you know, we've dealt, let's flip over to sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, we get a lot of, especially in the fall and the winter months, we get a lot of our more senior golfers that come down and want to take part in some of the great golf in here in Florida. And you know, a lot of them have been playing golf a long time, and you know, once they were hitting it, you know, maybe 250 yards, and now they're you know, struggling to get 175 or even 200 in some cases, if they're, you know, still hitting a decent ball. And you know, even though that old saying, you know, you can't teach an old dog new trick, that's not entirely true. With the right application and with the right attitude coming in, we can do a lot with even some of the more seasoned golfers out there. Walk us through a little bit, if you will, some of the things that you try to do with that particular golfer when you know they're coming in. There's already a history there, not necessarily with you, but a history in golf. How do you sort of unravel and get to the meat of the problem and show them, as Peter just talked about, really show and break down where they were and where they are, and having realistic expectations? How do you have that conversation with them?
Before I get into that, I've got to compliment Peter. It's almost as if he was a fly on the wall today. For me, I just took over a high school ladies golf program, and today was our first day. And everything he said, it was almost as if he had a videotape going. Well done, pat you on the back. We have a lot in common there. It's not too uncommon to do the same thing for the recreational golfer. There's two ways to look at it. Let's look at it from the retained student, the retained client, someone who's coming to you a lot, someone who's coming to you often. You're their go-to coach, or you have a go-to coach. I'm gonna put myself in the seat of the client. If you've got that go-to coach you're going to all the time, you've got to be honest and tell that coach what's going on. The less belly aching, the better, because we've got the coach. A good coach isn't going to really start helping you with your issues until the belly aching stops. What I mean by that is you can play the poor, pitiful me kind of thing, and we're there to listen, but we're there to get to the bottom line and help you with it. So the more prepared you are to talk about it, whether it's statistically or it's a particular physical feeling, maybe it's a physical ailment or impairment that you're struggling through, we got to know that up front. When we can cut to the chase, we can get you there quicker. From a baseline standpoint of view, this is where you've been. You used to hit at 225, now you're hitting at 200. Let's find some factual data and see if that's true, number one. Number two is we're finding out if it's true, most likely we may find some root causes. But we've got to get to that bottom line quicker for your sake, not mine. And the more prepared you go into a coaching session that way, the better. As much as you want to cry on our shoulders, and we're there for that to happen, the longer you cry on the shoulder, the longer it takes to get you where you want to go. And that transitions into what my wife calls come to Jesus meetings. I have a lot of those with all my clients, and that's basically saying, well, yeah, that's great, but tell me this or tell me that, or what I'm really searching for is the answer to the question why. I'm there to help
Yes.
you with that, but you've got to help me. You've got to provide me some facts, not some innuendo. A lot of the clients that come to me with high expectations that I don't see the second barrel, the vacation coach, the one and done coach, or what have you.
Yeah.
A lot of the one and done coaches that are not doing you a service are the ones that are just trying to patch you up. It's the easiest way. It's the lowest hanging fruit, and you can get a lot accomplished in the first 48 hours. But when I've had to be forced to coach that way, I get people calling me back or emailing me back 4 to 6, 8 weeks later saying, hey, I'm doing the same thing all over again. And the only answer to that is, well, keep doing what we told you to do. Well, at some point, you'll figure that out. For that one and done coach, the one and done coach is really good. They can help you out by, A, being honest with them, but B, why don't you leave your expectations and your ego at the door? I'm being very blunt and having that come to Jesus meeting with the listeners tonight, because when I can have this conversation with someone who's wanting more distance, well, let's figure out, A, can you physically do it? B, do you have the time to put in to get it done? And the best example of that are the seniors that frequent me in the Florida area. They're always talking about used to, and I keep asking, that's not part of my vocabulary. Can you tell me what that means? From the phrase used to, let's talk about what you can do now, and let's talk about what you can do right now that's really good. Sometimes in that come to Jesus meeting, we gotta make some sacrifices, whether it's moving to a different tee, or maybe you got to put those stiff shafts away for some senior shafts. There's a lot of different variables that come into there. But at the end of the day, let's look for long-term sustainable things that do meet your commitment level to the practice of golf and to the improvement of it. I'm of a firm belief that anyone who comes to me has a brain, so I'm trying to engage their brain that way, but they also have a life, and it's my responsibility to understand how golf fits into that life so they can sustain it and feel good about what they're doing. But bottom line, students, whether you're going to your go-to coach, you're going to the one-and-done coach, just be honest, be prepared. Expectations, I don't know if I've coined the phrase or I'm just borrowing it and rephrasing it. Expectations lead to one thing and one thing only, and that's failure, because they're a dream. A dream is a goal without a plan. Dreams and expectations, those are great, but do you have a plan to get them? And that's what you're going to a coach for. And if you keep that in the back of your brain and work with them and be willing to take on the realism of a come to Jesus meeting, you'll get somewhere.
Yeah, well said. John, you raised a very interesting point there. Having goals and that are important, but also part of the puzzle is you've got to have an action plan. And I think a lot of times, we have to get across to our students what it is that they want to see and expect. But they've got to understand that it has to be realistic based on their current circumstances. And I like the fact that you mentioned, because this is something too, and I think most people understand this, but you'd be surprised at how many people, as you said, are still playing with the same golf clubs they did 25 years ago, or certainly the same shafts, but their physical limitations are as such that that's just not going to work for them in today's game. They just don't have the physical prowess, if you will, for lack of better words, to be able to support that particular equipment. So sometimes even something like a very small, minute equipment change can give them some of those extra yards they're looking for, or even create more accuracy. A lot of times when you're playing the wrong shafts, a lot of times that can affect your dispersion patterns as well, because you're playing with too stiff of a shaft and or too flexible of a shaft, can have also the opposite effect as well. So these are key things that I think that going to your coach and going to your teacher professional and working through some of these factors as well is critical. I mean, it's great to go out and say, I want to buy some new equipment, But if you're buying equipment that's not being properly fitted or suited to your game, and you're just buying it because it's the latest, greatest thing out there, then you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but you're doing the people that you bought it for a disservice as well, because you're certainly not going to speak very highly of the pro that's helped to fit you out, or even the organization that you purchased it from, because you're not going to be happy with the end product. So lots of great points there, guys. I thought we would take a few moments, being that we're on the cusp of the final major of the year, the PGA Championship. Just want to get your thoughts coming into this weekend. What you would, if you were sitting with a group of students in front of the TV and you were all watching it together, obviously you want to enjoy that, but if you were using that as a teachable moment, what were some things that you would probably look for during the various broadcasts that you would want to point out? Obviously not necessarily during the broadcast, but if you were going to have a review of the day's events, what are some key things that you're going to look for that you would want to relay that information to your students? Say, and John, you've mentioned a couple times, Jordan Spieth does this, does that, and these are things that, even though you're an entirely different human being, these are some good habits maybe to incorporate into your golf game. John, I'm going to let you go first, and then Peter.
If you're watching the telecast, and probably a lot of your listeners may have the opportunity to go to a professional event, regardless of whether it's PGA, LPGA, Symetra, Web.com, even a mini tour event in your own backyard. One of the things that you will see in a telecast, not necessarily on the golf course, but at the practice facility, and Golf Channel does a really good job of this now, is showing golfers on the range or in the short game area or on the putting green. Pay attention to the discipline, especially during the tournament round days prior to going out, the discipline that these professionals have and how they prepare. That's something I always point out. I always point out that they'll show someone on the range after their round. They may be a little bit more calmer. They may be a little bit more loose in their appearance. They may be carrying on more conversations, but look at the discipline that they use in their station setup, whether it's alignment sticks or other swing aids that you're using. Look at the interaction that they have with their coaches. It's not a one-way thing. It's a dialogue. It's a two-way conversation. Those are the very first things I point out about telecasts, or when I bring someone to a tour event, that kind of discipline that's going on. From a watching the tournament itself, what I find most interesting, and I always highlight to clients, is if the audio is good, the conversation between caddy, player, and how decisions are made. At that level, what you have to understand, the skill level is within microcosms of each other. It's who's on that week or that day that ends up being the winner holding the trophy. But the decision-making process is very similar, and that decisions are being made based on what the player can do given the situation, not necessarily what they're trying to avoid doing. To Peter's comment earlier about being positive with a good attitude and making the effort, that's what you see in those kinds of conversations, is that they're talking positively. The attitude's always about achieving something, not avoiding something, and that's a big difference between the amateur and the professional. Professionals don't avoid unless they absolutely have to. They're always trying to achieve, and you can find those things out and not have to be so technical with swing vision or any of the other slow-mo things that are put on there, because those gals swing differently than you. If you look at the things they do from a strategic standpoint of view, preparation, discipline, or practice, how they make their decisions, you can immediately employ those things into your game and you not be so dependent upon a technical improvement. You can see immediate results from those things.
Great response to that question. Thank you, John. Peter, something else too. I think that, and I'm sure you agree with a lot of what John has just said, and I know you have some other thoughts as well. But I think one of the other things too, Peter, that you might want to, certainly point out, and just sort of food for thought. But what you often hear the professionals in a tournament, and of course when we get close enough and they're, close to the cameras and the mics, and you hear them talking, as John pointed out, with their caddy. The one thing you don't hear them do, which a lot of amateurs do, when they're faced with a situation where there may be a hazard, or some other, might be a fairway bunker, or it could be some other obstacle that they have to navigate. What you don't hear the professionals saying, oh gosh, look, there's a bunker over there. I just don't want to get in it. You will always ask them, what's the yardage to carry that hazard or that obstacle that they're looking to get around or whatever. You always hear them put a positive spin on. In other words, they're not looking at it as trouble. They're looking at what they need to do. What are your thoughts on that? And please feel free to add any other comments as far as what you would do if you were sitting down with some of your collegiate students watching this weekend's event.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree a lot of what John said. We could really use some more commentary on. I think there were, truthfully, I would tell people to mute the television. No offense to anybody, and just look and draw your own conclusions for yourself. But
right.
The biggest thing, to answer your first question, it's a lot of what I work on my competitive players with is just where they want the ball to go.
Right.
That's it. That's, and I had this conversation today with one of my players that's kind of moving into the competitive realm as a 68-year-old man, and he's just kind of made this decision. He told, some of his friends that he played golf with, they registered for the super senior, state amateur, and they just said it was fun. It was good environment. And, we're talking about the difference between, an amateur golfer that, can do this and what the competitor golfer is doing. And, I just explained to him, I said that the competitive golfers just think about where they want the ball to go. They're not getting over the ball and they don't have this, and this thought. They're getting up there with as much confidence as possible and just are laser focused on where.
Right.
And that they're basically just, not in a sense of willing it there, but that's their mindset. That's it. And, when a golfer or someone viewing at home is listening in on that conversation, they're just getting dialed in. They're just dialing in exactly where, and they've seen that green. They have that spatial awareness. Okay, this is where the flag is. This is where I want them to land the ball. This is
right.
This is why it's going to work. That's the focus. They're just consuming information, consuming the data, getting the picture in their head, and they're just thinking about where. If I'm sitting with a competitive group of golfers or, just some of my members, the conversation's always very real. And it doesn't go to the swing very often. People talk about just, they're massively impressed with how good they are. They have,
right.
Some of the players that maybe played some of these places that they've played and know how undulating that green is, or how small that green might be, or how small exactly that landing area might be, and how just it seems like they're just dropping balls out there when they're hitting driver. But it's gotten to the point where that swing vision piece is kind of an afterthought now. It's kind of, that doesn't have people's attention as much as it once did. You're obviously going to have your swing junkies out there that just love that stuff, that really want to, the amateur golfer that really wants to sit there and dissect it and, takes that time.
Right.
They really have fun with that. And that's great. But, it's really interesting because I always tell this to everybody. And on a telecast, you're only seeing the good shots. And then on Saturday and Sunday afternoon, you're only seeing the really good shots that only matter for the 10 people that are in contention. You don't see, I share with them. I say my favorite moment of all time on a telecast was during a U.S. Open a few years ago, and they had TrackMan on Steve Stricker, and he hit a hosel shank over into the into the woods, and it traced it. I was like, you'll never see that again. You'll never see that again, but that's very real. You don't see the person that's playing in a PGA Tour event that sculls a ball over the, over the green into the crowd unless they do it on the last group on Sunday. There's just a large number of shots that you don't see on a telecast. So, and I always tell them to keep that in mind, and they say, "Oh yeah, you're right." So you really have to, make it a little more realistic for them, and say this is really has a pretty good filter on it. So it sometimes can be a really teachable moment as to how people can react to either good or bad shots. You see the tour players just not react too much or not at all, and they're saying, okay, that's what just happened. As they're walking the ball, they're just formulating a plan on how they're going to tackle the next shot. They don't really, okay, that happened. Now we're going to move on. We're going to the next shot. What am I going to do to get back into where I feel like I need to be? That's the conversations I really do have with people. And you watch, their approach, their overall mindset, their overall, demeanor while they're out there. They're just hitting shot after shot and doing the same thing over and over and over again until the round's over. And a lot of times they'll be in the press conference afterward, and they'll say that they don't remember a whole lot of the round, especially if they really played well. They don't remember a lot of it, and they'll make sparse comments here and there because they genuinely don't remember. It's interesting. It really is.
Right, exactly. Well, and just to add a little bit to that, what's and you really touched on this, Peter. What I find very interesting, and I always, when I have an opportunity to do just what we're talking about with, some of the corporate people that I've worked with, one thing I always like to point out to them is, when the player has decided or formulated the shot that they want, I particularly bring their attention to it when they miss the shot, when they don't pull it off exactly the way they want it. There's not an unraveling of that player over the next 3 holes, talking about, gosh, I can't believe I missed that. And as you said, Peter, they walk off and they focus on the next shot at hand. Now, at the end of the round, when they go back to the range, they might recall some shots here and there, and they may work on some glitches that may have creeped into their swing throughout the round. But they're not dissecting those bad shots while they're out there. They're in tournament mode, and that's how they're going to stay until that round is over. Then they're going to go and work on some of the issues that they may have experienced earlier on that particular day. And this is something that I think a lot of you amateurs out there that are tuning in tonight really need to pay attention. We understand you're not going to hit every shot perfectly, but you need to stay focused in the game. And I think if you do that, that's going to lead to more fun as well. I think if you get too caught up, guys, in all of the unfortunate things that are going to happen, and Peter, as you pointed out, with the best of players out there that we don't see on television, we see occasionally a few bad shots, but for the most part, we're seeing the best shots that are being played, and especially as the rounds continue on, and as you said, get into Saturday and Sunday, we're seeing sort of the best of the best, and occasionally they might throw in a little bit of a bad shot, but they're certainly not going to focus on a player that's unless they're the leader. That's collapsed, that's gone out first thing in the morning, and he's already in at the clubhouse and had a bad round. They might highlight it later in the telecast a little bit, but they're not going to focus on that. So most of our amateur players don't see everything, and I think you guys both raised some great points. Well, guys, as always, we've I think had a very interesting discussion, and I know we didn't get into a lot of specific technique, but I think we certainly provided a lot of meat, if you will, for our amateur golfers out there to really think about before they tee it up the next time. And some of the things that they need to focus on and what really matters. And I think if you want to go out there and have some fun, I think what both John and Peter talked about tonight will serve you well, much more than just working on the fundamentals alone. Guys, as always, I'd like to give you an opportunity to share with the listeners if they want to reach out to you or want to follow you, how they can go about doing that. Peter, if you want to go first, and then John.
Sure. Ted, again, thanks for having me on. And John, thanks for sharing some time with me again. It's always great to be on with you. You can find me at my website is gogolfcoach.com. Instagram's kind of become my main platform that I use, and I'm at dailygolf.coach. And I'm always just happy to send me a DM. Send me a message on Facebook, whatever I can do for you. I'm just happy to have a conversation with you. And if you happen to want to get together, have you up to Deconic Golf Club. It's an extremely special place. It's the second-ranked university course in the country. And we do a lot of work on course. I do have a daily program that might work for everybody. So, again, my website is gogolfcoach.com. And Ted, John, thanks, guys.
All right. Appreciate it, Peter. Thank you, as always, for joining us here in the Coach's Corner and always bringing your best. John, what about you? For the folks that are tuning in that maybe want to reach out to you as well and pick your brain a little bit more, or maybe swing by your neck of the woods down in Orlando for maybe some good coaching or a few golf lessons, how can they go about doing that?
Sure. First off, Peter, Ted, always an honor to be on with you guys, and I always learn something, take a little nugget home myself. Anybody can reach me. It's real easy. John Hughes Golf Weather. It's my website.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, it's always labeled johnhughesgolf.com. You can visit me at Falcons Fire in the Kissimmee area of Orlando. That's my main headquarters. I'll be announcing a second facility here for the spring, not in the not too distant future. Still working on some details there that I'm really excited about. And you can also catch me on YouTube. I'm starting to put a lot on YouTube as far as just simple, easy nuggets you can do in the house or doing your next practice session that'll help you play a little bit better. But as always, Ted, honor, very much appreciate the ability to get on once a month and help people out and grow the game.
Well, guys, as I've said so many times, thank you for giving of your time. Just to let the listeners know, these guys give freely of their time in many cases, as John and Peter do once a month, and like to share their expertise and their experience with you. And it's not always easy when they've got to rush home from the golf course and have other little household chores, as John did earlier this evening before they jump on air with me. So I appreciate it as always, guys, and keep up the great work, and thank you again for always bringing your best. So guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the PGA Championship. Let's watch some great golf this weekend. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, Ted. Talk to you soon.
All right. Good night. All right. That was John Hughes and Peter Egazarian, both of the Coach's Corner panel professionals that were on this evening. Always enjoy having them on the show. And as I said, they always manage to bring their best. I'm going to be joined here in just a moment by my very special guest, international PGA touring professional, golf professional Horace Brown, coming on first time, and actually was introduced to him through a very good friend of mine who was actually a guest last week, Byron Casper. They've known each other for many, many years, and we'll ask him about that a little bit when he comes on air here in just a moment or two. But let me just remind everybody before I bring my special guest this evening on, let me just remind everybody, of course, we are live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central here on the blogtalkradio.com network. And for those of you that are here for the first time, thank you and welcome for joining us here on the network. And best way to circulate around and let everybody else know how to go about finding us is go to blogtalkradio.com /Golf Talk Live, or just simply type in Golf Talk Live on the search key, and that will take you to the main page. And, of course, we're front and center every Thursday during the live broadcast. But you can tune in later if it's not convenient for you to join at this particular time. Maybe you're working, or maybe you're finishing up around in the golf course, or you might be even watching the PGA Championship tonight. You can listen to the show at your convenience. Just go to that link and scroll down to the on-demand section, and you can hear the recorded version a little bit later on this evening or whenever it's good for you. You can also go to some other great social media platforms, iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, and now this year, TuneIn.com. And again, just type in Golf Talk Live, and that will take you to those respective media platforms. Don't forget to join me also on Tuesday mornings on the Women of Golf Show with my good friend and co-host LPGA professional and Legends Tour player Cindy Miller as we interview some of the great up-and-comers from the Symetra Tour, many of the winners, and just some of the great young ladies that are out there battling it to earn their LPGA membership later for 2019, they're all in the Volvic race for their cards, and we've had some of the top players from this season on the show on Tuesday morning. So remember, Tuesday mornings from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern, go to blogtalkradio.com, and this time put /Women of Golf, or again, just type Women of Golf in the search key, and that will take you there. And it's also available on the other 3 social media platforms as well, iTunes.com, Stitcher.com, and TuneIn.com. So make sure you tune in and join Cindy and I as we talk with some of the great young up-and-coming professionals on the Symetra Tour and LPGA, as well as some great other female professionals, not necessarily players, but business professionals that use golf as a valuable tool in helping them achieve the success and just do so many great things to give back to their communities. All right, as I mentioned, I've got a great guest on this evening, and I'm going to bring him out here right away because we've got lots to talk about. So help me welcome my very special guest this evening, international PGA touring golf professional, Mr. Horace Brown. Good evening, Horace, and welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Ted, thank you very much. Horace Brown here, Radio Fix. Congratulations on the Golf Talk Live, and we're very proud, and I thank you for giving us the consideration of being on your show. And Brian Casper is a very good friend of ours, the whole 9 yards, and we just love Billy Casper. He's one of the all-time greats. But anyway, as it turns out, well, congratulations on your success in the whole 9 yards, and you're in for a whole show right now. How far do you want to go back?
Well, we're going to go back a little ways here, and what I want to do, just very briefly, as I mentioned, Byron, of course, was my very special guest last week on the show, and I obviously reached out, and I've been watching you. Just let me step back just for a second, just to let the listeners know. Horace and I have actually talked the last couple of evenings on the phone, off air, of course, in preparation for tonight. And of course, we're both very familiar with Byron Casper, and of course, his late father, Billy Casper, who of course was a legendary in the game and won over 51 tournaments around the world, including a couple of majors. And was just a great gentleman, and so that's kind of how Horace and I have come to know one another. What I want to talk about here is a couple of things, Horace. First and foremost, just to let the folks know, you were born in Charleston, South Carolina, back in 1962, and but really have spent a lot of your life growing up in beautiful San Diego, California. Now, I know you began playing golf at a very, very early age. Tell us, first off, how young you were when you started to play, and who helped sort of steer you, if you will, or navigate you out on the golf course?
Well, that's a great question there, Ted. And actually, it's my father. Like, my dad was an astronaut. I'll be an astronaut, but my dad was a golfer, and we are from Charleston, South Carolina, and what a beautiful place. And we actually grew up right down the street from Charleston Country Club. My dad actually built a 6-hole golf course back there in the 50s in the whole 9 yards, and I had a chance to see that. But the kindred is this here, Todd. Not only playing golf, just being disciplinary faculty of something so great. You know, my dad actually caddied for Frank Stranahan that won the 1936 Masters in the whole 9 yards. And Charleston is basically the birthplace of golf in America. So a lot of people don't realize that, but that's the way it is.
Right.
But Dad inspired me to play golf, and it teaches you how to be a true gentleman. And that's what we profess as far as our Junior Golf Foundation is concerned. And you know what? The difference makes a big difference, a very big difference with a person that not a person, but only people and kids. And the kids is the next generation, and it teaches them a little bit more than mathematics. You know, golf is a very hard sport to learn. And so I'm very blessed with
Right.
that. So I have to be attributed towards to my dad right now. Okay.
You know, well said, Horace. And I want to point out for those that maybe not familiar with your father was one of the, of course, the many pioneers back in the 50s and 60s. Of course, he played alongside greats like PGA greats like Lee Elder, Charlie Sifford, and of course legendary prize fighter Joe Louis on the UGA, what was at that time called the UGA Negro Golf Tour. And enjoyed getting out there and playing some competition. I want you to touch a little bit on that, how important that was, and how your father and the other gentleman that I mentioned, and of course there were many others, Teddy Rhodes, who I've talked about on the show with his daughter Peggy Rhodes, and talked about how important your father and these other gentlemen that I've mentioned in really spearheading the development, if you will, through that tour, to help young African-American golfers, much like current Tiger Woods, really giving them a chance and introducing to them a game that at one time was not available to them.
No, absolutely. I think in the early 40s, late 40s, early 50s, and then you left out a name, Jackie Robinson. He's a heck of a golfer
yes,
too as well. And he ran track and football and baseball, and he actually played golf for UCLA. And my dad had a chance to meet him down there in Florida, the whole 9 yards. And as far as the ethnicity is concerned, it's just about just being a perfect gentleman. These guys back in the 40s and 50s are perfect gentlemen. Unlike sometimes of today, with kids, they just don't get it. You know, I mean, a gentleman means to be the best you can be. You know, actually. I'm sitting right here in front of my father right now, and I welcome him. Just to say that I cannot tell the story the way he can. You know, I've come from Charleston, South Carolina, playing on the Chitlin circuit. You know, with Teddy Rhodes and Lee Elder and things of that nature. And then he told me one thing when I was 4 years old that Billy Eckstein, you know, he had a little bit of money in his pocket. And golf is all about money. If you don't have the money, you can't play golf. And the whole 9 yards.
Right.
So he chose one other person, you know, Billy Eckstein. He was a fabulous singer, gentleman. And my dad messed up by one spot. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to fill that shoe, you know. And actually, in certain ways, along the conversation, we will. But ladies and gentlemen in the radio world, this is Gordon Brown Sr. Introduce yourself, Dad.
Hello, Todd.
Yeah.
Todd?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing very well, Mr. Brown. How are you this evening?
I'm fine. How are you doing? I want to do just what Horace. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity. I'd like to give
I'm honored to have.
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have a historical background in golf and history. I'm 82 years old, and I've been playing golf for 73 years. I began playing golf at a very young age, and what happened was that my family on James Island, just outside of Charleston, owned quite a bit of property. So we utilized some of that property to set up and make our own golf driving range. So we dug a hole in the ground, put a stake into it, put a flag on the stake, and we began to hit from. What we did was that we used water and mixed, so we had dirt tees instead of regular wooden tees. So that's the reason why we had any golf clubs at those days is that my father's relative, he was the caddy master at Charleston Country Club back in the 30s and back in the 40s, and he brought home some golf clubs. And when he went to work, then his nephew decided that they would bring it outside so that we could learn how to swing and hit a golf ball. But my story take me a little bit further than that. I played baseball, football, basketball, field and track, but I was too small to play those physical sports. So I decided that the best thing for me to do was, as small as I was, I needed to work on those golf grins, and that's what I did. So it means that when I was growing up, and at the age of 12, I bought my own set of golf clubs from a company named Advance. And what happened was that I was able to I got so good at such a young age, I was able to compete against older players for real money. And, you know, when you play $1 Nassau or $2 Nassau, you got to have no less than $20 or $30 in your pocket. But right. I became so good. And what they did is that they allowed me to travel to Wilmington, North Carolina. And from James Island to Wilmington, North Carolina, it's 120 miles one way. But those guys were really, really gentlemen, and I really appreciate them giving me an opportunity to compete with them. But that's what I did, and that's how I learned to play the great game of golf.
Absolutely.
Well, I think. I thank you for sharing that. Let me just ask your father, if I can, real quick, and then Horace, you and I will move on with our discussion. Mr. Brown, I want to ask you one question. Of all of the players, whether it be Lee Elder or Charlie Sifford and many of the others that you played with, who was the fiercest competitor of all the players that you played with at that time?
Well, the thing about it is that
Pete Brown,
Pete is from Mississippi, but Pete was the head pro at age 16 or 17 at this all-black golf course in Mississippi. But then when I began to play and the organization that I played with mostly, and it was called the Ray Mitchell Invitation in Miami, Florida. And the regular United Golf Tour did not come into the South. It stayed on the East Coast. So it meant that I never really got a chance to play on that golf tour. But all those guys that would have played on the East Coast came to Miami because Miami was such a beautiful place, and the area was called Miami Springs. But I played at one time and won of the tournament in Miami Springs. I played with Willie Brown, Howard Brown, Gordon Brown, and Pete Brown. But the best player of them all was Pete Brown. Pete Brown, and he was the best gentleman I ever played in my life with playing golf. You talk about respect and how to show appreciation and how to talk to you, how to preach, how to treat you. Pete was the best. And you know that Pete won the first PGA tournament, the 1964 Waco Open. Then he won the 1970 San Diego Open. Right. So, then he won the Coronado Open just before that. So, but the best one of them all that know how to treat you and was so great and polite was Pete Brown.
Yeah, and I had a chance to watch him one time. Right here, I seen him, and he was very quiet. And I had a chance at 10 years old. I think it was 1972 when I seen him on number 4 Torrey Pines, and Jack Nicklaus actually finished second or third. And that's the reason why Jack Nicklaus redesigned Torrey Pines himself, because he said he's not going to come back if anybody can win. But our family, Pete Brown, he won that event. And we're not talking about African American. Yes, we are, but on top of that, things need to be said and inundated. I'm not going to bite my tongue on anything that I believe in. You know what I'm saying? So just bring it straight forward and true. So with my dad, that is his historical. He's being very humble. He actually played golf for the Army. As a matter of fact, he won the Fort Leroy Johnson tournament, which the trophy's still right here in Overall Moody on the U.S. Open, and my dad was basically kicking his butt. No. Yeah, it was game fun. But anyway, Overall Moody can play some golf, man. I'm telling you, they called him Sarge, so let's bring that name back. And he was disciplined. He's Army. He's structured, and there's several different ways about getting on the PGA Tour and through the Army. And I said, Dad, I'm not going to the Army, the Marine Corps, the Navy, or whatever to play golf. But on top of that,
right.
Listen, so that's how that went down. Let's get to the next question, man. Let's go.
Yeah, we're gonna move it forward here. And thank you. Let me just say thank you, Mr. Brown, for sharing a little bit of your history with my audience. Horace, I want to I'm going to read through some things here, and then I just wanted to get sort of your response. We'll move forward a little bit. You began really playing competitive golf at a very early age, at age 9. And then a little bit later on, you went on to win over 57 junior golf tournaments in your career at that time. In fact, you were actually known as Tiger before Tiger in the junior golf circuit. You went on to win his age division 5 different times, and you were actually celebrated as the San Diego County Junior Golfer of the Year in 1980, alongside some very notable names like Phil Mickelson, Charlie Hoffman, Scott Simpson, Pat Perez, and obviously a host of other PGA greats. So you obviously were able to develop a very strong, I guess, attraction not only to the game, but an ability at a very early age. What do you think attributed? What did you do to help some of our amateur golfers out there when you were playing junior golf? What did you focus on that helped you to be able to have such a phenomenal junior career?
Well, thank you for saying that. I attribute that towards God, number one, and we have a family of 4 professional golfers. My sister played in the U.S. Open the whole 9 yards, Ada Brown. Her book is out right now. It's called Building of a Champion. And on top of that, so we went out and played, and my dad is so disciplined. My dad actually went to work at 3 o'clock in the evening, came back at 12, and had to get up and play with the San Diego Chargers in the whole 9 yards. I think he only had like 4 hours of sleep. And so my attribution towards success was watching my dad just being a man. It taught me how to be a man, and being very respectful. Matter of fact, I could not wait until I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. So when he went out with his management group to play golf, he left me on the putting green and chipping green for hours and hours and hours. Once he turned the back 9, then I would follow him, hop in the cart, and then after that I got a hamburger. That was my reward. So I practiced hard. I dedicated my whole life to the 1 yard. And as far as being the best, winning my age division 5 times, 10 and under, 11 and 12, 13, 14, and being ranked top 10 in the world, which is remarkable, along with the high school attributes, and growing up alongside with people named Phil Mickelson, Pat Perez, but we had people like Billy Casper and Chet Courtney and things of that nature that led me even go even beyond that and play golf for San Diego State, and to become the first African American to varsity at San Diego State. And it's not like being the first black man going to the moon, but the dedication, my drive is my dad. He taught me how to be a man, and my mom taught me how to be a man and be humble in the whole 9 yards. And so I couldn't wait to collect the trophies. At that time, Todd, 1970s, early 70s, it was so unlikely to be African American and play this beautiful game called golf, because at that time, it was basically, I'm not going to paint a picture. It's a lily white sport, and my dad gave golf lessons to Mandilly, and he says, "Why don't you get your kids in the San Diego Junior Golf Association?" So after that, he was like, "Well, kids, let's go," and then we did. So I won 10 and under, 11 and 12 twice, 13 and 14. And then on the last day of the Junior World, man, I topped the ball on the last round, and I lost by 4 shots. But that's not going to be inundated or I forgot to sweep under the rug. But I played my little butt off there, and to be recognized. Not recognized. All you have to do is just go ahead and Google me, man, or just Facebook me at the San Diego Horace Brown in the whole 9 yards. But I'm not one to dwell on the past. But my thing is like this.
Right.
I'm like, hey, I want to think about the future, because back then was then, now is now. The doors are open. Kids are hitting about the golf clubs are greater. We have one of our students in our foundation, Valentina. She's 13 years old. Hit the ball like 280 yards. You know what I'm saying? Down the middle.
Wow.
So the opportunity is still there. And golf is such a great sport, and it teaches such humanity, how to be polite. I mean, you can go to any country in the world and just talk to a person and just, like my dad says, put up or shut up, man. Once you put that ball in a hole, there's nothing that you can say after that. You know, just put the numbers on the board. Yeah, that's it. That's
right.
the philosophy, man. It doesn't take sponsorship.
Right.
It does, because, you know, you have to practice, you have to buy balls, you have to do this, that, and, you know, with I'm feeling that the last 30, 40 years, you know, that the major golf corporations could have set aside a point to the point where, hey, listen, our next generation will come up, but they didn't. That's the reason why they lost $975 million, because of the fact that we can't even go to the Olympics and get our butts wiped down there in Brazil. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
the reason it's like that is because, you know, golf was a country club sport, and it still is. And I was in San Diego, but on top of that, you have to address the main position, the main issue. Our future, the children are our future. You know what I'm saying? But you know, I don't hate to say it. I'm saying it. The Koreans, they understand that. They come here and they have 30, 40 kids. If you want to play golf, we're going to sponsor you. But in America, if you want to play golf here, they're like, well, you're on your own. You got to pay. How is the kid going to pay for golf shoes, golf clubs, golf balls, a membership, this thing, that thing? You're coming out the hood. It's not going to happen. So therefore, going to the Olympics, that's what we get. So we need to address that issue first. All right. I'm not trying to overrun the conversation, but in order for America to be the best that it can be, we need to address talent with talent. Most people with talent got the money. Most people with money have the talent, don't have the talent. But the people with talent don't have the money.
Right.
So that's why and then people overseas understand that. They would just simply say, hey, listen, if you want to play golf, we'll sponsor you. But over here, man, my goodness, I think we spent over $1 million just to win one tournament. You know, my sister won the Junior World. I mean, the first African American to win the Junior World before Tiger Woods. I won astronomically a lot of events, and people don't even know me. You know, but that's why they say, hey, that's Tiger Woods before that's Tiger Woods. I'm not being facetious or anything of that. I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, no, you raised, you're exactly right, Horace. You raised some very interesting issues, and we talked about this on my program before. You know, one of the, and you and I talked about this with respect to some of the Korean players. You're exactly right. There is a disconnect, if you will, in the golf industry right now, and I don't want to stay on this topic too long, but I think it does definitely deserve to be spoken. But you know, one of the problems I think that the golf industry and why they've lost so much money here recently is because it is still perceived as an elitist sport by so many people. If you want to, for instance, if you want to play soccer, or if you want to play football, or even tennis, you can go to any of your local sporting goods stores, and probably for less than $30, you can get a reasonable tennis racket and a sleeve of tennis balls, or maybe a football or something, and you can go out in any field and play. Golf, on the other hand, takes a much more financial commitment, and you're exactly right. That's something that is lacking here, and there certainly is a disproportion in how the money is allocated in golf. And I think one of the problems, and I'm all for professional golf and the golf tours, I think that's important. But I think that a lot of the money and resources is put into the tours, and there's so much other areas of golf that it could be allocated to help grow this game. And you're exactly right. There certainly is a disconnect. Horace, I just want to read out a couple of things, just more for the audience, just to get a better understanding. And then there's some things specifically that I want to talk to you about. You already touched on, of course, your high school career and how you really amassed one of the best high records in the history of San Diego, and it goes on and on and on. Then you attended San Diego University, where you studied business admin, and while making the men's varsity golf team as a freshman, you were a medalist in 8 NCAA college matches, while your coach, Dr. Frank Scott, was inducted into the NCAA Coaches Hall of Fame back in 1982. So you've had a very good junior, certainly a high school, and then onwards to a very strong collegiate career as well. So obviously golf was very important to you and played a key role in much of not just your youth, but in your teenage and into your young adult years. And as you transition into the next phase, it's just as important. I want to get to the foundation in a moment, but I want to ask you one other thing about your coach at that time back in San Diego University, Dr. Frank Scott. What did you learn from him specifically, and how did he help propel you? What advice did he give you, and what conversations did you have, generally speaking, that has helped you to get to where you are now?
Well, thank you, Todd. I mean, it's an elevation, and I'll reach that point, as far as going to La Jolla High School, growing up here in the so-called ghetto and catching a 4 bus at 4:30 in the morning to play La Jolla Country Club, and being captain of the team for 3 years and playing La Jolla Country Club, which was strictly off limits for African Americans, and becoming number 1 and winning CIF, and the only person in San Diego history to win 3 city high school championships. That's inundated. And then superseding that, I said, hey, listen, this is a great career. And then being recruited by 27 different colleges, including UCLA, and then have people lose my transcripts from Wake Forest to Stanford to whole 9 yards, and then the whole 9 yards. I had Frank Scott coming to our house, which my dad was recruited in 1962 with Chuck Courtney and Gene Littler, the whole 9 yards, and I feel bad about it to this day. I said I turned it down. I wish I would have said yes, because he had our back. But then after that, it became a landslide. If you turn down this, and then turn that. But my dad was recruited by Frank Scott when he first came here from Charleston to San Diego, and so therefore I felt that I need to fulfill his shoes and his dreams. And you know what? I did. I walked on the team as a freshman. I varsity. Greg Twiggs won the San Diego Open. Matter of fact, our top 6, he won the U.S. Club of Links. It was a tough team to get onto. And on top of that, so what the attributes towards my success, through college and high school was determination, dedication, practice, every day getting up this whole 9 yards, and not saying no. Just say you can do that.
Right.
That's my anthology.
Right.
I'm never going to say, I'm not going to give up, including right now, on top of that. So, but to answer your question right there, it's like that was a drive for me to fill my dad's shoes, to play for golf for San Diego State, and did a hell of a job.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you. Congratulations on doing that. I want to ask.
No,
yeah.
Listen, I mean, it's we're speaking about African Americans, but to play since 1895 at San Diego State University, to be the only African American to varsity for golf, that's quite an attribute, And
right,
like, so
right, exactly.
That's the reason why we started the inner city junior golf, not black, white, Mexican, whatever have you. To give the children a chance to let them know that their dreams can become true. Since 1895, I mean, over 120 years, I'm the only African American that ever played golf at San Diego State, and I did a good job.
Yeah.
So,
and let me.
Go ahead, continue.
Let me just so the audience gets a little bit of a better understanding of what you were just talking about. You and your father started the San Diego Inner City Junior Golf Foundation, and you've actually helped over 5,000 students through 11 elementary schools in National City, California. And the foundation has given out more than $120,000 in scholarships, helping students to graduate from major colleges and universities. What I want you to talk about, Horace, if you wouldn't mind, with respect to the foundation, you obviously wanted to go into an area that traditionally was not accessible, and you wanted to be able to provide a way to give those that maybe didn't have, and again, it's transcending all races. It's not limited to just African American or Hispanic and so on, as you mentioned. But it's really it's really more of a demographic of individuals who maybe didn't always have the best of circumstances growing up in life, and you really have used this foundation to be able to reach to them. And you're also, as we talked about the other night, using golf as a vessel, if you will, to help give them a leg up and give them the same opportunities that you've been given, correct?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Todd. You know, let us start right here. Actually, approximately 14, 15 years ago, we've been contracted to the National School District to bring golf to the inner city. And we did. What we did, we turned their playground into a driving range and a putting green, the whole nine yards. Gave us spectacular. I think we're the first station that's ever done something like that. You know, and you know, I mean, you know, we live here in Southeast San Diego. I went to La Jolla High School, big deal. But there is, like in Southeast San Diego, there is not one golf course, being America's finest city, not one golf course within a 15-mile range. These kids, they live in a concrete jungle. I mean, how do they don't know about golf? If Tiger Woods doesn't come down, I mean, Tiger's not going to cross that border, cross 805. I mean, hopefully Tiger's not listening. If he is, I can hear what up, Tiger. And then reach back, man. Get back to the community. To your life. But it's still, that's reality. That's the truth. It's not going to happen because the amount of money, the endorsements, the money, you're making millions of dollars. And I'm not blaming Tiger. I'm not blaming Oprah Winfrey or Bill Cosby or Michael Jordan. But once you make it out the hood, you should come back and step back. I give golf lessons to one of the greatest running backs in the world. Terrell Davis, LaDainian Tomlinson, Marcus Allen, all these guys. Once you leave the hood, you never come back. And that's wrong. You know, so my dad and I, what we did, we established the San Diego Inner City Junior Golf Foundation through our heart and our genuine dedication to make sure that these kids have anything. Because golf is not the only thing. Because we also provide life skills and college, and with the $120,000, our last student he's a double major through engineering, and he's a lawyer. All right, that kind of stuff through USD. Mm-hmm. His name is Franco Garcia. He's black and Mexican and Chinese, but he's very brilliant and very resilient and well spoken. Matter of fact, he came to our last proprietary tournament called the USS Midway at Gordon Brown and Lawrence Chambers golf tournament, and he spoke very well. He started crying. Right? That's what I'm about. You know, it's not about faking the fun. It's all about just touching the lives and hearts. You know, and golf is like this. If you don't have the money, you can't play golf. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. If you don't have the money, don't play. How are you going to turn pro? If you don't have the money? If you don't get a scholarship, and then after you get a scholarship, then you need to get a sponsor. And then if you don't come from the elite 120, all right, that your parents got $100 billion in the bank, all right, and then whatever. Not to say that Justin Thomas is not like that, but I'm saying, but that's what happens. You know, I mean, you're not going to marry Wayne Gretzky's daughter and be number one in the world. You know, that's the bottom line. Right. You know, so, you know, golf is you know, like you said, Pete Daniels, he says he wrote this book called Uneven Lines. All right? And I didn't book, but it touched lightly, but he didn't put the Brown family in the book, and we are actually America's first golfing family. We have 4 kids. On the scholarship from San Diego State, Avis and Warren Brown played for USIU, and my brother, Captain Gordon Brown, played for Cal State Fullerton. What in the 70s? What are you guys? You know, so golf is very sentimental to me, as you can tell, and I just can't wait to be the oldest rookie on the PGA Tour because I know what it takes, and I'm still in great shape, and I can hit the ball a mile, and I'm good looking. You know, there you go.
let me ask you a question, because I want to move on to your career as a golf professional. You obviously, for many years, you played on some of the mini tours, and you got obviously some Monday qualifiers and that for a number of years, and you got to play with some of the great players. And I know that you and I want you, obviously we can't we don't have time to go through the whole story, but you've had a chance to really travel the world. You've been to Fiji, you've been to Mexico and other parts as well with your golf career, and it's allowed you to see really so many things that maybe might not have happened in other circumstances for a lot of folks out there. So golf obviously has brought you on a global stage, if you will, and has helped to give you opportunities. So as I mentioned earlier, as you progress through this next phase of your career, you've got some specific goals in mind. You want to get out and play not only on the PGA Tour, but also on the PGA Champions Tour. What is your focus now as you progress and get out there and want to compete? What is your number one focus, and what do you hope to accomplish? What would be a win for Horace Brown?
Just getting back on tour. My main focus is like this. I mean, just to win a Masters is not out of my scope. I'm very good. But as a young kid, I did have a chance to travel the world. I won the America's Cup in Canada and Hawaii, and then I had a chance to travel the world and live with Vijay Singh's brother, Krishna. And I traveled the Paradise Tour down there for like 4 years and things of that nature. And then it was just fantastic, But my scope right now, in reality, with my age, is not a detriment. I'm single, no kids, and I love golf. I'm married to a golf club, so you got to look forward to me for being out there on 2019 PGA Tour, no matter what tour it is. I'm good. It's heartstrong, and it's called desire, dedication, and the belief in the Lord and Jesus Christ, my Savior. And I'm totally cool with that. So at least you tried. So my theory is this: if you have something that you desire to do, never give up. Keep trying. If anybody tells you no, that means that they can't do it. Don't talk to me. I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
That's my dedication. That's my desire. That's my formidable place as far as being. And I don't see what's stopping me. To tell you the truth, it's great. I
right.
I have a loving mother and father now, and the whole 9 yards, and they support me. All my friends support me, the whole 9 yards, and oh my goodness, it's like it's going to be a Walt Disney movie. The kid that never gave up.
Horace, I want to mention something earlier on the first hour of my program. As I mentioned to you the other night on the phone, I have what's called Coach's Corner. It's a panel discussion with some fellow golf professionals. And one of the things that we talked about tonight, and you really, without actually coming out and saying it, you really led very beautifully into that. And it's really about attitude. I think a lot of people, in whatever it is you do in life, I think if you come in with a positive attitude and a belief in yourself, I think you can accomplish, regardless of what the naysayers might tell you, you can accomplish really whatever you put your mind to. And you've got a goal and a vision of getting out and playing. You enjoy playing competitive golf. You've obviously done it very well, both as a junior and high school and even collegiate. And now as you are in your 50s, you want to get out there because you've still got that energy and that drive and those competitive juices. But yet at the same time, you obviously want to be able to give back as you are through your foundation and that. Where do you see Horace Brown 5 years from now? Where would you like to see Horace Brown 5 years from now?
Basically as a statue, But it's being happy and just making sure that I've done the best that I could do in the time that I've been allowed to do so, with my health and strength, and I just praise God for giving me the strength and the ability to go ahead and move forward with that. It's so important. Children. We have kids right now that, watching these TVs and internet. We're living in a fast-paced world right now, but they forgot about
Yep.
the Lord. They forgot about the Christ. And so they think that if you got some money, you can go buy anything. You can't buy what my dad has taught me, basically.
Right.
He taught me love. He taught me integrity. He taught me showmanship. He told me how to be a gentleman, and I'm very classy. And did I tell you I'm good looking too?
Yeah, I think you. I think you. I think you mentioned that earlier.
Whatever, call me. But anyway, it's just. There's certain things that you cannot. There's certain things that you just can't receive. Without the power and the glory. I'm saying you have to be yourself. And I'm definitely myself, and I'm full of myself, and I love being myself, and I'm very sure you'll see me on the PGA Tour next year. How's that?
I look forward to that.
Absolutely,
Horace,
absolutely.
I agree, and I look forward to that. Horace, let me ask you. Let's talk about for a few moments. Let's talk about golf specifically. You obviously are out. You play every day. You're practicing every day. To keep yourself in top form, if you will, on the golf course. If you were going to advise the amateur golfers that are listening out there, because you've played competitive, you've played at the highest level already throughout your career, if you were to give them some advice on what they could do as an amateur just to improve their game, what area of the game or what specifically would you have them focusing on to get the most out of their game?
Putting. Just putting, my brother spends like 8 hours a day on the putting green. Get it down to the point where you can't miss a 4-footer, and then work on your personality, because golf doesn't like people with no dull personalities, because your personality reflects if you miss a putt and you're going to get upset. So the emotions really sets in, as far as your attitude. Your attitude is your altitude. It's how far you can go, how high you can go, or how low you can go. But when you're up, that's when you make a lot of. You know what I'm saying? You could draw for show, you could putt for dough, but at the last one, on the last green at Augusta, the person that makes the putt wins. And I'm so proud of Phil. Watch him make them couple putts and win that in the whole 9 yards, and we had a great time growing up together with the whole 9 yards, and it's quintessential, what I'm saying. But there's a determination, there's a drive between each and every individual that when they have it. The best player I ever played with, his name was Tim Robinson. He was number 1 for Stanford, and we battled every time. But we couldn't wait to see each other to battle. But his attitude was the whole situation. He knew he was going to win, and when I topped the ball on that last hole, he won the junior world in front of me, man. But he's such a gentleman. On top of that, and I love him for the rest of my life. He's cool. So anything I can say to an amateur is like this. Never give up. And, like Nike says, just do it. But, my new slogan is like this: never give up. And just keep trying.
Yeah.
And find something in your corner in your life that, that's going to be, embellishable to the point where, you got some confidence. Because confidence exudes confidence, And, as far as me winning my 5th county championships in front of Byron Gorman, he went on a PGA Tour the next year. I just looked in his eyes. I knew he was afraid. I hit a driver 8 iron on a par 5, and then I had like a wedge in because I knew what it takes to win. Well, I won it, And so as far as me giving any advice to any amateurs like this, you're not an amateur. You're a professional until you become an amateur. Right? Like Bobby Jones said. And listen, there's only one way to hit a golf ball. That's right down the middle. Right?
Exactly. Well said. Horace, when you look back, obviously, in addition to playing a lot of golf, you obviously have watched a lot of golf, and I'm talking about on tour. When you look at today's players that are on the PGA Tour, we'll stick with the PGA Tour. Who impresses you? Who are some of the ones that impress you the most, and specifically why?
Well, that's a tough question, and because it's not hard to just say that Tiger's, he's the best, but to this day, and I'm being despondent not to say that, to this day on tour, but I had a chance to watch my dad hit the golf ball. I would watch him, man. He had a driver's Strata Black on number 13 and knocked it on the green on the City Amateur, and that inspired me. It really did. But as far as today's conditions with the golf club, overpowering the golf ball, I'm looking at Dustin Johnson. Wow, he's and he has a short game. The guy's good. He's number one in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not too excited about certain names. I should not say, but
right.
One that really just leaps at me is like Ricky Fowler. He can just win when he wants to. You know what I'm saying? He's against all odds. He's a little tiny kid, and he's beating the giants like Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yeah, and he's got some style. He's got his own style as well too.
Like this guy, he has personality. A lot of these golfers don't have personality. They're very boring. Nobody wants to, I did this. You know what I'm saying? But
well, and that's right, and that's the difference, Horace. That's the difference. Yeah, I
but I'm saying, he needs to wake up a little bit. He has no personality. Sorry, there is.
Right. Well, and that's the difference. Right, that's the difference, I think, between some of the earlier golfers during, the Billy Casper and the Jack Nicklaus and the Arnold Palmer and Gary Player days. They all had very unique and different personalities, and they, and you got somebody like Elite Trevino who went out there and, he was a bit of a jokester and a talker, and nowadays you get out there and it's more like watching, artificial intelligence. It's like you said, there's not a lot of personality. There are a few.
They raise the quiet sign when Elite Trevino comes out there. You got to expect that. So it took 50 years for Jack, Gary Player, and they're like, Lee, just be quiet, please. But he brings a different element and excitement to it. It should not be boring, And it's as far as the element of surprise, as far as golf is a classy sport. Now, when you start talking about Billy Casper, classy individual, classy, just straight classy. And I'll share the story with you. I was with him at 1972, and I was the only little black kid out there. And my dad gave me 15 cents to buy a bag of Lay's potato chips and maybe a soda. This is a long time ago, so that 15 cents went a long way. And then I had a junior golf cart, and I get in the car, walked up to the first tee, and I was a little tiny kid. And then Billy Casper comes to the first tee, the last group. I said, I want to watch the final group. And he walks up there with David Graham, and I'm not sure who the other guy's name was, but a long ball knocker. And so Billy Casper just walks up to me and goes, "Hey, kid, are you looking at me?" And the whole crowd just dispersed. I said, "Hey, yeah, you want to have a hot dog?" I said, "Heck yeah." I said, "Come on over." I said, "But you're about to tee the ball up. You're in the first tee. I'm not worried about that. I'm talking to the people. You know what I'm saying?" So out of all the people, he put me up right there, and he put on some mustard, some relish, and he goes, "Man, that's the doggonest dog I've ever dogged." And I just like, wow, he's like the son. And he walked to the first tee, and he smoked the ball down the middle like it was nothing. I'm like, man, I need to tell my dad that, right? So anyway, as far as inspiration of different things, just a classy, like my dad, just straight class. They don't make them like that anymore. Just class, you know.
Yeah.
So one thing I would like to do to the children, especially through our foundation, show some class, show some tenacity, you know, show some tact, you know, because this is where you come from, you know, and that's very important. And golf teaches you that, you know. I mean, it's performance. Golf is not the only thing, you know. Life skills, mannerism, the whole 9 yards,
right.
Education, shifts, this whole 9 yards, and that's what we're all about. So anybody out there in radio land that understands the San Diego Junior Golf Academy and Foundation, you can find us on Facebook, and therefore support us if you'd like to. If not, you can contact Ted or Rico, and then we'll get in contact with you. All right, and I'll be happy to tee it up with you. All right. I had to throw in a little plug right
Sounds
there.
Good. I love that. I love that. Well, as I said to you the other night, Horace, and thank you. And as I said to you the other night, you probably didn't believe me when I told you. I said this will be the fastest hour that you've probably ever done in radio, and we're literally just got a few minutes left. So,
if we have 5 minutes left, can you please confirm?
We got about 4 minutes left. Go ahead.
Okay, so 4 minutes. Gordon Brown here. Ask him anything you want to know about golf.
I want to know if, and this sort of goes to what I asked your Horace a little bit earlier, if you wanted to advise somebody that's never played the game, never really been exposed to the game, what would be the first thing that you would say to them to get them interested in the game?
Just never become real serious. The golf is not your life and it's not your wife. So what you want to do is that you want to make sure that you don't get too serious. You cannot get too serious. Now, Horace see it a little bit different. But in golf, if you don't maintain that level of consistency where you don't get too serious, because if you get too serious, then you don't have it. And mind doesn't allow you to open up to really enjoy yourself while you play the game.
Absolutely. Well spoken.
So, in other words, well put, Mr. Brown. You actually, I think what you really said was you want to go out and have some fun and enjoy the game, and not just let it overwhelm you by getting too serious and down on yourselves when you don't play as well as you'd like to. Well said. Some great words of inspiration for a lot of the amateur golfers out there. Mr. Brown and of course your son Horace, I want to thank the two of you for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. It's been very interesting, and I hate that our time's up, but maybe I will have you both back again here on a future show. But Horace, again, if you want to just let the folks know if they want to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best way to do that if they want to get more information, not only about the foundation, but maybe talk a little golf with you down the road. How can they go ahead and do that?
Absolutely. I'm not invisible, but our websites are under construction right now. But you can reach us on Facebook under San Diego Junior Golf Academy. All right, and then we do have a donation page on top of that, and then you can contact me as well. So we're very well placed on top of that, and then you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and the whole 9 yards. And I'm actually coming out with a instructional tooling aid for children and introducing the game of golf with the perfect swing. It's called the Horace Brown Swing Trainer. So when that's done, but anyway, you can go ahead and just reach out to me, and my number is 619-990-0703. Let me say it again right there, 619-990-0703. Call me anytime. Give me your golf story, because this is ours, and I appreciate you, and we love you guys, and thank you very much for this beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. There you go.
Well, I appreciate it to both of you for joining me tonight. And Horace, I will have you back on, and we'll talk a little bit more. As I said, the hour goes by very quick. I'll have you back on, and we'll talk a little bit more about the product that you've come out with and how it's going to be able to help some of the youngsters out there be able to play this great game. And so I'll have you back on a future show, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And maybe along the way we'll get some updates as you transition back out on tour and play some competitive golf. So again, thank you very much for joining me this evening. All right, that was my very special guest and his father, Horace Brown, and his father, Gordon Brown Sr. I want to thank both of them for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. Of course, Horace is a international PGA touring professional, and he's gearing up to get out for the 2019 season. He's getting ready to head out on the PGA and the Champions Tour and get back into some very heavy competitive golf. So we wish him all the best and the best of luck for that. Also, a very special thank you to the Coach's Corner panel, John Hughes and Peter Agazarian. Thanks, guys, for doing a great job. And as I said, always bring your best to the panel discussions. And I want to thank you, of course, most importantly, all of the supporters and fans of the show, and, of course, the general listeners. Thank you very much, guys. And it's really you guys that help make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. So thank you for all of your continued support. And I will endeavor to do my best to make some more interesting guests come on the show. We've got some great stuff coming up here over the next few months, so I hope you'll continue to tune in. On behalf of all of the great professionals that join me not only on the Coach's Corner panel, but the many guests that join me each and every night, thank you and God bless everybody. Enjoy the PGA Championship this weekend. Watch it not just for some great tips that you might pull out of that, but just watch it for the pure enjoyment and entertainment value of it. And thank you for being supportive of this great game. I look forward to seeing you next week with another round of Coach's Corner panel and another very insightful interview. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next week on Golf Talk Live. God bless.